Little was known about the majority of the Emperor's life, of who he was and what he did before he emerged as the great Emperor of mankind. Only the Emperor himself remembers. A few pieces of information have come to light from various different sources and present some small parts of a coherent whole. However, their reliability is often disputed, especially as the Emperor's tale changes somewhat with each retelling. It is said that the Emperor's birth, while a natural process, was actually the result of a scheme created by the wisest and most powerful of living humans at the time, the conclave of shamans. These men, termed shamans by their society, were powerful psychers with great experience of the warp, finding their souls and those of humanity endangered by the growing perils of the warp gods. These psychers decided to pool their power into one human, a being they called the New Man, already having gained the power to reincarnate themselves. Upon death, the shaman's souls would transfer to the warp, accumulating enough power to reincarnate as humans. The shamans entered a suicide pact. Thousands of them poisoned themselves and sped their souls towards the warp at the same time, presumably pooling their soul energy and using their reincarnation ability. They brought about the birth of the new man, the Emperor, 1 year later. The immortal being who would become known as the Emperor proceeded to haunt the history of humanity as a ghost, watching and waiting and occasionally influencing. Living secretly amongst mankind, he developed his abilities until his psychic might allowed him to gain knowledge of not only his own world, but the dangers beyond it. Aware then of the vast predations awaiting humanity, the being that would become known as the Emperor resolved to guide and protect humanity. Eventually, over 10,000 years before his current circumstances, he took his struggle into the open, primarily because of the ever-increasing number of psychers whose very existence endangered their species. He was at this point just another Terran warlord, but hit Malcador, who convinced him to take the title of Emperor. The Emperor undertook a series of campaigns against all the other warlords on the planet that would later become termed as the Unification Wars. During these wars, the Emperor employed several military formations, such as the Thunder Warriors and Geno 5-2 Gilad, that consisted of genetically altered engineered warriors who played a significant role in the eventual victory. With this victory, the planet and population of Terra were at last unified under one rule, that of the Emperor. With this achievement behind him, the Emperor then set into motion his plans to take his purpose of uniting and guarding mankind out into the stars, to unify with the bastions of humanity scattered across the galaxy. This undertaking would become known as the Great Crusade. The Emperor prepared extensively for the Great Crusade. He created the special Astro Telepath Corps to link his eventual dominion together, and caused the creation of the Astronomicon, a supremely powerful signal device powered by the Emperor's own psychic might that would allow simplified and safer travel through the warp. Chief amongst his designs, however, were the creation of the superhuman warriors, the logical extension of the gene troopers already under his command. He had first undertaken the Primarch project, the creation of 20 infants from his own genetic code, designed to mature into powerful generals for his armies. However, this plan went awry with the interventions of the Chaos Powers. While accounts vary to exactly what happened, the end tale is always the same. The Primarchs were cast into the warp and lost. In the aftermath of these events, the Emperor evolved a new plan. Using genetic material which had been derived from the Primarchs, he created a caste of warriors which would possess some of the qualities of the Primarchs. These successors to the genetically altered warriors of the Unification era were the Legions of Staris, the Space Marines of the first founding. After purging the Fire Warriors and replacing them all with more efficient warriors, the Imperium led Space Marines into the reconquest of the Sol system. He drove Xenos enslavers from the moons of Saturn and Jupiter, and most importantly achieved peace and mutual integration of the mechanism of Mars. This alliance provided the Emperor with much of the means and material to extend his crusade into the stars. With the final abatement of the warp storms began the Great Crusade. The Emperor's forces rediscovered human worlds, cast out alien oppressors, and claimed new territory aplenty. Perhaps most importantly, the Emperor leading his crusade rediscovered his lost sons, the Primarchs, scattered throughout space. The infants were found one by one, and over a period of many decades, and reunited with their father and their kin. All were placed in command of the Asteres legions, created from their respective gene seed, and played their part in forging their father's Imperium. First amongst the Primarchs was Horus, first discovered and first honoured. The two fought together at the forefront of the early Great Crusade. The Emperor protected Horus during the siege of Relius, while Horus repaid the favour during the Battle of Goro. During the Battle of Gyvasperian, the Emperor slew the mighty Orc war boss, Garkal Blackfang, after it had held off 3 of his Primarchs. Some 200 years into the Great Crusade, the Emperor decided to return to Terra and place Horus in charge of the military advancement of his Imperium in his stead, granting him the title of War Master. The Emperor declared that the time had come for his sons to show him what great leaders they were, turning his back on direct military intervention. The Emperor was then created the Council of Terra, the Imperium Thais, and expanded the civil governing bodies of the Imperium before retiring in his seclusion beneath the Imperial Palace to begin work on his greatest ambition, the Webway project. At some point, the Emperor left the palace to decree the Edict of Nicaea, forbidding the use of librarians within the Astartes legions. This turn of events did not please all the Emperor's subjects, several of his sons in particular. In the final stages of the Great Crusade, the Emperor's most trusted son Horus succumbed to the chaos temptation. Horus was told the reason the Emperor had left the Great Crusade was so he could attempt to reach godhood, abandon all his sons, and betray one of the most central tenets of the Great Crusade, to enlighten humanity and free it from the bonds of false gods. Horus saw it was his duty to save the Imperium and turn on his father. Having corrupted fully half of the Space Marine legions, Horus led them against the Emperor and plunged into the fledgling Galactic Empire into a colossal civil war. This became the most terrible conflict in human history, and billions perished as the traitor legions tore apart the empire they had helped to forge. The Emperor's son Magnus attempted to warn his father of the coming slaughter, but his telepathic message breached the Emperor's psychic wardings at the Imperial Palace and caused grievous malfunction into the Golden Throne. Distraught, the Emperor ignored Magnus' warnings and banished his sons from his sight. The Emperor then dispatched the Space Wolves under Leman Russ to bring back Magnus before him in chains. However, the now corrupted Horus intercepted the Emperor's order and changed it, instead ordering the 1,000 Suns destroyed. For the rest of the heresy, the Emperor was forced to deal with the Golden Throne's malfunctions, which created a warp breach in the depths of the Imperial Palace. As demons flooded through the breach, the custodial guard and Sisters of Silence held them back at bay, while the Emperor punishingly exerted himself on the Golden Throne to prevent all of Terra itself from being swallowed. With his attentions turned to the crisis, the Emperor left management of Horus Rebellion to Malcador and Rogel Dawn. During this sad state of affairs, the Emperor engaged in telepathic communications with the lowly astropath Kia Zulan, who had been given a vision of the heresy's conclusion. During the psychic communiques, the Emperor revealed he already knew his ultimate fate, but had accepted it. Later, Korax, distraught over the disaster of Sistan V, arrived at the Emperor's palace and demanded audience with the Emperor, diverting some of his attention to the strenuous task of maintaining the Golden Throne. The Emperor psychically imbued part of the secrets of creating the Astartes into his sons' minds. Thus, Korax was able to begin rebuilding the Raven Guard. After 5 years of maintaining the stability of Magnus' Webway breach on the Golden Throne, the Emperor began to exhibit physical fatigue. He finally began to show signs of exhaustion, and his nose would bleed even in the telepathic visions he sent to his custodian tribune. After sensing the birth of the powerful demon Dracnian in the warp, the Emperor knew the war in the Webway was reaching its climax, and the fate of mankind would soon be decided. He ordered the Sisters of Silence to gather 1,000 Psykers across the galaxy and sacrifice them to the Golden Throne. This would allow the throne to be powered for a single day without the Emperor's presence, and he used this time to plunge into the Webway and rescue the retreating Imperial forces. After sweeping aside the demonic hordes, afterwards the Emperor was forced to seal the Webway portal on Terra by again becoming a prisoner to the Golden Throne. The Emperor lamented that his great work was ruined and maintained that now that the Webway project had failed and humanity was ultimately doomed. Horus would be defeated by his hands, but someone else would take his place. To the shock of his custodian guard, the Emperor declared the Imperium ultimately doomed, be it in a year or 10,000, and for the first time admitted he did not know what to do. The last act of Horus' rebellion was played out above Terra as the Emperor led a desperate assault against Horus's flagship, after the treacherous War Master deliberately lowered his void shields as an invitation for a final duel. Though the Emperor was a being of unlimited psychic and physical might, Horus had become mighty indeed, bloated with the power of all four Chaos Gods, and gaining the Emperor's own powers of Molech. The two battled, with the Emperor taking many grievous injuries. Horus sliced open his chest armour and opened his jugular, and severed the tendons on his right wrist, disarming the Emperor. A punch from Horus breaks several of his ribs, then a psychic blast melted the flesh of the Emperor's face, destroying his left eye. Lastly, Horus tears off the Emperor's right arm and breaks his back over his knee. At that moment, a lone Adeptus Custodi warrior entered. Horus showed the warrior the Emperor's broken body, and laughed. The warrior stepped between Horus and the Emperor's broken form to save his life. Horus flayed the warrior alive. The Emperor took advantage of the moment. At last, after a tragic battle, and though heartbroken at the loss of his favoured son, the Emperor slew Horus. Though the struggle left him close to death, in this state he was found by Rogel Dawn. The dying Emperor dictated plans for the arcane life support machine that would sustain his remaining cells for over 10,000 years, and he was subsequently interred into his altered vision of the Golden Throne. Enthroned within the life-sustaining Golden Throne, the Emperor's will was transcended from his maimed body. The Emperor is now divorced from the day-to-day running of the Imperium. This is left to the Adeptus Terra, who govern in his name. Now his will is interpreted and executed by the High Lords of Terra. His worship is regulated by the Ecclesiarchy, his law enforced by the Adeptus Arbites, and his form guarded by the Adeptus Custodes, and his people protected from the horrors of the galaxy and from even themselves by the Inquisition. The Emperor is confined within the Golden Throne, vast biomechanical machinery forming the great Sanctum Imperialis, located deep within the continent-spanning complex of Terra known as the Imperial Palace. There the Emperor's physical form is sustained by carefully maintained machinery. The enthroned Emperor of mankind is a ravaged corpse. The last surviving cells in his shattered body are sustained by the Golden Throne, providing an anchor for the Emperor's spirit, which extends across the entire Imperium. The Emperor and the Golden Throne continue to function through the daily sacrifice of thousands of psychers. While his body is sustained, his will endures. I hope you enjoyed this brief overview of the Emperor, the God King of the Imperium. And don't forget to like and subscribe, and also see our Facebook page, where there is now a vote for the next video.